There was a stranger at my kitchen table, and my own son was pointing at me like I was a piece of furniture that had come with the house. The stranger had a leather folder and a good watch. He had spread papers across the oilcloth Colleen picked out years ago, the one with the little blue cornflowers on it. I had poured him a cup of coffee before I understood what he had driven out here to buy. He had come to buy the ground under my feet. "Don't mind, Dad," my son said. He did not look at me when he said it. He signed the place over to me back in 21. He just forgets things now. The stranger nodded, the way you nod at bad news about somebody else. He slid a pen toward the middle of the table. I looked at my son, 41 years old, my boy, certain in that easy way that I was already gone. I did not raise my voice. I have never found much use for that. "Of course," I said. "Walk the fields if you like. There's coffee." I set my cup down. "One more thing. Would you like to hear the call where you admit the deed's still mine?" The kitchen went very quiet, but I'm getting ahead of myself. "My name is Otis Ballard. I am 69 years old. I am retired, and I am a widower, and I have farmed the same 160 acres of southern Iowa dirt that my father farmed and his father before him, outside a town called Ridgeway that you have never heard of and never will. For 31 years, I did something else besides farm. I climbed poles. I strung and tested telephone line for the rural cooperative that hung a voice on every one of these back roads. I retired from the co-op in 2019. A lineman spends his life making sure a signal gets from one lonely place to another and gets there clean. You learn to listen for what is really on the wire under all the noise. You learn to write things down. You learn, more than anything, patience, because the storm does not care that you are in a hurry, and the pole does not move faster because you are angry at it. The town sees a quiet old man with a rusted pickup and a dog named Radio. That is about all they see. That suited me fine. Radio is a healer mostly. He rides in the truck bed and thinks he is supervising. Every morning he and I take the section road east while the light comes up over the beans. And every morning I have my coffee at the Ridgeway Diner at the second stool from the end. And every morning I come home to a house that has been too quiet for 3 years. Colleen died in the spring of 2023. Her heart, which had carried the both of us for 42 years, simply set down its load one Tuesday afternoon while she was hanging sheets. I found her in the yard with the basket still half full. I will not say more about that. Some things a man keeps in his own pocket. She left her blue transistor radio on the windowsill over the sink, and I have never moved it. She left her handwriting all through a green ledger where she wrote the seed and the weather and the price of corn every year since Reagan. And I read a page of it most nights the way another man might read scripture. "Write it down, Otis," she used to say. "Write it down so you never have to argue about it later." I did. I always did. It turned out to matter more than either of us guessed. Because here is the thing about a habit. It does not know when to quit. 31 years of recording and logging every service call, every line test, every promise a man made to me over a telephone, and my thumb still finds the little recorder in my shirt pocket without my brain being asked. I record my calls, all of them. I always have. It is not suspicion. It is just the shape my hands took a long time ago and never lost. Colleen used to tease me about it. She would pick up the little recorder off the dresser and hold it out and say, "Otis, one of these days you're going to record something you wish you hadn't heard." I would tell her a man never regrets the truth, only the not knowing. She would shake her head and put it back and say I was too stubborn to be as gentle as I was. She meant it as a complaint. I have decided to take it as the kindest thing anybody ever said to me. A gentle man with a spine is just a stubborn man who aimed himself at the right things. My son did not remember that about me. He remembered a soft old father who wrote checks and asked few questions. He did not remember the lineman. Let me tell you how we got to that stranger at my table. It came on slow, the way weather does. It did not start with a forged deed. It started with a tone of voice. Dwight had a hauling business over in the next county. Trucks, a yard, a loan he co-signed with the wrong bank. When it started to slide, about 2 years back, something in the way he spoke to me changed. He began finishing my sentences. He began answering questions that had been put to me. We would be at the diner, the four of us, Dwight and his wife Sherry and me, and sometimes my daughter, and the girl would come to take my order, and Dwight would say, "He'll have the number 2. No toast. He gets confused by too many choices." I had ordered the number 2 with toast at that counter for 30 years. But he said it kindly, you understand? That was the trick of it. Everything cruel was said kindly. "He gets turned around," he told the loan officer once, right in front of me, patting the air near my shoulder. "I handle his business now." I did not handle it that way, of course. I handled my own business fine. But you try correcting a grown man who has decided you are a problem to be managed. You try doing it in a diner without becoming exactly the confused old fool he is describing. So I watched instead. That is a lineman's habit too. You watch the faces more than you listen to the words, because a face cannot lie as smoothly as a mouth. Sherry's face, when she talked about the farm, had a hunger in it she could not quite hide. "It's just so much land for one man," she would say. "It would be kinder, really, to let him rest." A home, she meant. A small, clean room somewhere with a television bolted to the wall. Kinder. They used that word like a crowbar. There was a night that told me more than I wanted to know, though I did not understand it then. It was my birthday back in the winter. Dwight took us all to the steakhouse in the county seat, made a show of it, and when the check came, he picked it up off my side of the table before I could reach it. "I've got Dad's," he told the waitress, loud. "He gets muddled with the tip." Then he paid with a card and looked around to see who had seen him be a good son. I had figured that tip in my head since Nixon, but I let him have it. A man does not fight his boy over a restaurant check in front of strangers. I told myself he was being generous. I told myself a lot of things that winter that I would not tell myself now. And there was the co-op reunion in the spring. Men I hung line with for 30 years. And when one of them asked me a question about the old switching station, Dwight answered it for me, wrong, and patted my arm. And the man looked at me with a soft pity I had never once earned. That was the look I could not stand. Not the losing of the land. The look. I went home and I did not sleep. And I did not know yet that the look and the deed were the same thing wearing 2 coats. They kept measuring me for a smaller life. Every visit, the tape came out. I let them. I am ashamed to say I let them for the better part of a year, because grief makes a man agreeable in the wrong ways, and because he was my son, and because a father wants to believe the worst thing about his boy is only laziness and not something with a sharper edge. Then in June, the envelope came. It was a plain envelope from the county recorder's office. Inside was a courtesy notice, the kind they send after a document is filed. It confirmed the recording of a quitclaim deed, Ballard to Ballard, 160 acres, dated the 9th of March, 2021. I stood at the mailbox a long time reading it. I had not signed a deed in 2021. I had not signed a deed since 2015, when Colleen and I put the whole place into a living trust with our lawyer, so that the farm would pass clean to our children and never get chewed up by probate or a nursing home or a bad year. The land did not belong to me as a man anymore. It belonged to the trust. I was only its trustee, its caretaker. I could not have signed it away to Dwight in 2021 if I had wanted to, and I had never wanted to. Somebody had signed my name. I did not go to the sheriff. I did not call Dwight and shout down the wire. I went home and I sat at Colleen's table, and I did the one thing a lineman always does when the signal makes no sense. I went back and listened to the recording. I had a call from 3 weeks earlier, one I had let record without a thought, the way I let them all record. Dwight had called about something small, a piece of equipment, and had not hung up cleanly. The line had stayed open on his end for 4 minutes while he set the phone down and talked to Sherry in the same room. He did not know it was still connected. He did not know his father was, at that very moment, the man on the other end of a live wire, exactly as I had been for 31 years. I played it twice. His voice came out of that little machine easy and unbothered. "It's done. The deed's recorded," he told her. "I backdated it to 21 so it looks old, and Petey notarized it as a favor. Don't ask. Once Aldridge closes, the money clears the loan and there's plenty left over." A pause. The refrigerator opening. "Dad won't know. He signs whatever I put in front of him. And if he does notice, so what? By then it's the developer's problem, not ours. Then he laughed. That was the part I listened to twice. Not the scheme, the laugh. I did not shout at a machine. I just sat and listened to my son twice. And then I turned Colleen's radio on so the house would have another voice in it. That was the night I stopped giving the benefit of the doubt. A man can carry a great deal for the people he loves. He cannot carry a lie that has his own name forged at the bottom of it. The next morning I drove out to see Arlen Tibbetts. Arlen and I hung line together for 22 years. He is 71 now, and his hands shake a little, and he keeps a shop full of half-fixed motors he will never finish. He is the only man alive who knew Colleen and me before we were anybody, and he is the only man I trusted to hear this out loud. I played him the call in the shop with the door shut. He listened with his jaw set. When it ended, he did not say anything for a while. He wiped his hands on a rag that made them dirtier. "You could go to the sheriff tonight," he said finally. "You'd be right. Forgery, false instrument, elder fraud, they'd stack it up on him a foot high." He looked at me. "And you'd be right, and you'd lose your boy for good, and you'd spend what you got left of your life being the man who put his son in a cell. Is that the ending you want?" "No," I said. "Then be right slower," Arlen said. "The land's not going anywhere tonight. Take it to Harriet Loomis and let the paper do the work. Paper doesn't get angry. Paper doesn't say something at a kitchen table it can't take back." Colleen used to say nearly the same thing, with fewer words. "Let the facts do the work, Otis. Facts don't need you to raise your voice for them." So I took it to Harriet Loomis. Harriet is 58 and has practiced estate law in the county seat for 30 years. She drew up our trust back in 2015. She read the county notice, and she listened to the recording once with her eyes closed. And when it was done, she folded her hands on her desk very neatly. "Otis," she said, "I want to say this plainly so you can stop carrying it wrong. That deed is not a threat to your farm. It is worthless. It always was." "It's recorded," I said. "Recording it doesn't make it real. It only makes it public." She started laying it out for me the way you would explain a fuse box to a homeowner. The land is titled in the Ballard Family Living Trust. You cannot personally quitclaim what the trust owns. A deed from Otis Ballard as an individual, transferring trust property, conveys exactly nothing. It is a signature on a fantasy. She tapped the notice. And it gets worse for him. He backdated it to March of 21. The notary, this Petey, his commission didn't begin until 2022. I can pull the state record in an afternoon. So the document notarizes an event a year before the notary was legally allowed to notarize anything. It contradicts itself on its own face. I sat with that. "And the call," she said, "isn't your weapon. It's your corroboration. It shows he knew. It shows intent. But you may never need to use it against him at all if you don't want to. You have something better than a fight, Otis. You have the truth, and the truth here is boring and total. You don't need to raise your voice. You need the room and one afternoon." The room and one afternoon. I turned that over in my hands the whole drive home. I could have gone to Dwight right then and ended it. Slapped the notice on his table, played him his own laugh, watched him come apart. There is a version of me that wanted that. I will not pretend there is not. But I kept thinking about what came after the ending. If I ambushed him, he would spend the rest of his days telling himself he had been cornered, tricked, that if things had gone just a little differently, he would have gotten away with it, and everyone would have been fine. He would never once have to stand inside the truth and feel the floor of it. He would only feel beaten. I did not want him beaten. I wanted him answerable. There is a world of difference between those two words, and it took me 69 years and one forged deed to learn how wide it is. So I made a decision that surprised even me. I would not ambush him. I would let him build his own stage, and I would simply be in the room when the truth was. I spent the next 2 weeks doing quiet, unhurried work, paperwork. I went to the county recorder myself and pulled the full chain of title, every transfer on that ground going back to my grandfather, and there it all was, clean, up to the trust in 2015, and then nothing, until the forgery bloomed up out of the record like a weed in 2026, pretending to be 5 years old. I got the notary's commission dates certified. I had Harriet prepare the documents to formally void the quitclaim and confirm the trust. I made a copy of the recording and left the original with her, sealed, the way you preserve a thing so no one can later say you tampered with it. The recorder itself is nothing much to look at. It is a small black thing I bought at the co-op supply back when we switched from the real machines, and it has ridden in my shirt pocket over more miles of gravel than I could count. It has a nick on the corner from a fall off a pole in '96. I have recorded ice storms and dial tones and 1,000 men promising to be home when the crew got there. It never once judged a single voice it caught. It only kept them. I used to think that was the dullest work in the world, keeping. I have come to think it might be the whole job. A man's memory bends toward whatever he needs to believe. A machine does not need to believe anything, and so it is the only honest witness most families ever have, and most families never think to keep one. I sat with the sealed copy on Colleen's table one night and asked her out loud what she thought I ought to do with it. The radio hummed, the refrigerator clicked on. She did not answer, of course, but I knew what she would have said because she had said it my whole life. Let the facts do the work, Otis, and then be kinder than the facts allow. That second part was always the hard part. It is the part Dwight did not know I was capable of, because he had spent a year deciding I was not capable of much of anything. I did not hide any of it, but I did not announce it either. And all that time, Dwight kept pushing. He came out twice a week now, brisk, cheerful, papers under his arm. Just a few things to sign, Dad. Cleanup stuff for the estate. He would set a page in front of me and put the pen on top of it and talk about the weather while he waited. I signed nothing. I said my hand was bothering me. I said I wanted to read things slow now at my age. I said I would get to it. Each time his smile got a little tighter around the edges, because Vaughn Aldridge, his buyer, was getting impatient, and a scheme built on a forgery cannot stand to wait. Time is the one thing a liar cannot afford, and I had all of it. Finally, he lost his patience the honest way, which is to say he tried to rush me. Aldridge wants to close by the end of the month, he said one evening, standing in my kitchen with his keys already in his hand. We're doing a family supper Sunday. Get it all done at once, nice and easy. You, me, Sherry, Suzanne. I'll bring Aldridge to sign the last of it. It'll be good. It'll be like the old days. Like the old days. In my kitchen, at Colleen's table. All right, I said. Sunday. My table. Bring your guests. He heard yes. He did not hear the rest of it because I said the rest of it only to myself. Then I called my daughter. Suzanne is 43 and lives 2 counties over with her husband and my granddaughter Willa, who is 7 and believes I hung the moon, an opinion I have done nothing to correct. Suzanne is the child who calls on Sundays, who drove 3 hours each way when her mother was sick, who never once measured me for a smaller life. I had kept all of this from her because I did not want to make her choose between her father and her brother. But Sunday was going to be a hard afternoon, and I did not want her walking into it blind. I told her everything. The deed, the notary, the recording, the plan for supper. She was quiet a long moment. Then she said, Dad, why didn't you tell me in June? Because I wasn't sure yet what kind of ending I wanted, I said. I'm sure now. What kind is it? The kind your mother would recognize, I said. She came Saturday night so we would not be doing it alone. She stood at the sink and touched Colleen's radio the way you touch a headstone, and we did not say much, and it was the best evening I had spent in that house in 3 years. Sunday came bright and hot. I will tell you about that afternoon carefully, because it is the whole reason you are here, and because it was, in its own quiet way, the loudest thing that ever happened at that table. Dwight arrived first with Sherry, carrying a grocery store cake as if we were celebrating. He had dressed up. He was full of good cheer, the brittle kind, moving fast, setting out papers, talking. Suzanne set the table without a word. She had that steadiness her mother had, the kind that fills a room quieter than shouting. Vaughn Aldridge came at 2. He was exactly as I remembered from that first ambush, the leather folder, the good watch, the careful eyes of a man who buys land off families for a living and has learned not to look too closely at how the families feel about it. He shook my hand and called me sir and did not quite meet my gaze, because some part of him had already been told I was not entirely there. Harriet Loomis arrived 4 minutes later. I had not told Dwight she was coming. "Who's this?" he said, and the cheer slipped for just a second. "My attorney," I said. "She helps me with paper now. My hand, you know." I flexed it for him, the old man's flex. He relaxed. He thought she was there to make his signing go smoother. We sat. His guests, his stage, Colleen's cornflower oilcloth under all those papers, and her radio playing low on the windowsill because I had turned it on, and her ledger sitting closed at my elbow where I had set it like a place setting for someone who could not come. Dwight started right in. He was good at it, I will give him that. He laid the sale out for Aldridge as a done thing, a formality, a family coming together to move a tired old man gently into his rest. "Dad transferred the ground to me a few years back," he said, warm as pie. "So it's really just my signature and his, tidying it up. He forgets the details, so I keep it simple for him." "He forgets the details," I said. "That's right, Dad." He patted the table near my arm. I reached into my shirt pocket and I set the little recorder in the middle of the table, right on top of his papers, where the pen had been. "Before anybody signs anything," I said, "I want to say one thing, and then I want you all to hear one thing. Dwight, you told this man I'm too far gone to know the difference. Let's find out together whether that's so." The kitchen went very quiet, the same quiet as the cold open, because that was the moment, and now you know how I got to it. I pressed the button. His own voice came up out of that machine into that hot, bright kitchen, easy and unbothered, exactly as it had been the night I first heard it. "It's done. The deed's recorded. I backdated it to 21 so it looks old. Petey notarized it as a favor. Dad won't know. He signs whatever I put in front of him. And if he does notice, so what? By then it's the developer's problem, not ours." And then the laugh. Nobody moved. Sherry had gone the color of the tablecloth. Vaughn Aldridge sat back slowly, 1 inch, then another, the way a man leans away from a stove he has just realized is lit. Suzanne looked at her hands. Dwight stared at the recorder as if it were an animal that had walked in off the road. I turned it off. "Now," I said, and I nodded at Harriet. She was gentle about it, which was somehow worse for him than if she had been sharp. She laid 3 documents on the table, one at a time, and named them as she went. The certified chain of title showing the land had passed into the Ballard Family Living Trust in 2015 and had never left it. The notary's commission record from the state showing that the man called Petey had not been a notary at all on the day he claimed to have notarized a signature. And the trust itself, naming Otis Ballard as trustee, with the plain and total sentence that trust property cannot be conveyed by an individual quitclaim. "I want to be clear for everyone at this table," Harriet said, "because Mr. Aldridge in particular should hear it. The deed transferring this farm to Dwight Ballard was never valid. It never could have been. There is nothing here to buy. There never was." Dwight found his voice then, the way a cornered man does, reaching for the story that had kept him warm all year. "Dad, come on," he said, and he tried to laugh, and it came out wrong. "You're confused. You don't understand what any of this even means. Tell them. Tell them you don't understand it." I looked at him a good while before I answered. I wanted him to feel the length of the look. "I understand a quitclaim deed and a living trust and a notary's commission date," I said, level as line. "I understand corn futures and a 3-phase transformer and 42 years of marriage and how to bury my wife and get up the next morning and feed the stock. I understand every word on this table, Dwight. The only thing in this room I do not understand is how you looked at the man who taught you to drive and decided he was already dead." I set my hand flat on Colleen's ledger. "So no, I will not tell them I don't understand. I understand it all. That was always the problem for you, wasn't it? Not that I'd miss it, that I wouldn't. He had nothing. There was nothing to have." Vaughn Aldridge closed his folder. He was not a cruel man, I decided, only a busy one who had been lied to by the person who brought him. He stood up. "I think," he said, "I've got the wrong end of a family matter here, and I'm sorry for it, Mr. Ballard." He nodded to me, and this time he met my eyes, and there was nothing in his face now that thought I was gone. I'll see myself out. The screen door clapped shut behind him. His car started in the yard. Radio barked once at the sound of it, out of duty, and then it was gone down the section road, and there was no buyer, and there was no sale, and there was only my family sitting in the wreck of the afternoon my son had built to fool me. Nobody reached for the cake. Nobody reached for the coffee. Colleen's radio played something soft and old, and the clock on the wall did all the talking, and I let it. I have never been afraid of a silence. A silence is just a wire with nothing false on it. Sherry left first. She stood up with tears standing in her eyes, though I could not have told you for whom, and she said, "Dwight," once. And when he did not answer, she took the car keys and walked out. I heard the truck go. Then it was Suzanne and Harriet and me and my son at the table. "I'll give you the room," Harriet said quietly, gathering her papers. She squeezed my shoulder on the way past, the way Colleen used to. "You know where I am, Otis." Suzanne took Willa's booster seat out to her car to give us the porch, but she stayed in the yard, close, the way you stay close to a fire that might jump the ring. I went out and sat on the porch step. After a while, Dwight came and sat beside me, because there was nowhere else in the world for him to go. For a long time, neither of us said anything. The beans moved in the heat. A truck went by out on the road, and neither of us was in it. "How long have you known?" he finally said. Not a question, really, just the last of the air going out of him. "Since June," I said. He put his face in his hands. 41 years old, and my boy, and drowning. "I was going under, Dad," he said into his palms. "The yard, the loan, all of it. I told myself you'd never even feel it. You've got the pension, the house. The two of us are set once you're gone anyway. I moved it up. I told myself I was moving it up." He looked at me, and his eyes were the eyes he had when he was 9, and had broken something and come to tell me before I found it. "I told myself you'd never feel it. I felt all of it," I said. "That's the part you got wrong. You didn't decide I couldn't understand the deed, Dwight. You decided I couldn't understand being thrown away. Those are not the same thing, and one of them a man feels in his teeth." He wept then. I let him. A father knows the difference between the crying that is sorry it got caught and the crying that is just sorry, and this after a while turned into the second kind, and I put my hand on the back of his neck the way I did when he was small, because I am his father, and that job does not end, because the son turns out to be a man who forged a name. Here is what I did not do. I did not sign the criminal complaint Harriet had drawn up and left in her folder, ready in case I wanted it. She had told me plainly it was mine to use. Forgery, false instrument, the stacking up a foot high she had warned me about. Every bit of it true, every bit of it available, and a court would have handed it to me. I signed the other paper instead, the rescission, the one that killed the forged deed dead and confirmed the trust and put the records straight forever, so that no version of this could ever rise up again, not while I lived and not after. Then I told him the terms, because mercy without terms is just permission, and I did not raise a fool for a son, only a frightened one. He would tell Sherry the whole truth, no soft edges. He would go to Harriet on Monday and put in writing everything he had done, so there would be no pretending later that it had been a misunderstanding. He would deal honestly with the loan on his own yard, and not $1 of this farm would go to bail out his lie, because a debt paid with a lie is just a bigger lie with a longer fuse. And he would earn his way back to my table one Sunday at a time, if he wanted to, over as long as it took, and I would not lie to him about how long that might be. "You won't go to the sheriff?" he said. "Not today," I said. "Accountability isn't the same as ruin, son. I want you answerable. I don't want you destroyed. Those are two different roads, and I have watched too many good families burn the whole house down because they couldn't tell them apart." I looked out at my father's land and his father's. "But understand me, the door is closed. I'm not going to pretend it isn't. What you'll find out is whether it's locked. That part's up to you, and it'll take years. And I'm an old man, so you'd best not waste them." He nodded. He understood, I think, for the first time in a long while, that he was talking to the whole man, and not the half of one he had invented to make his conscience quiet. I closed a door that day. I want to be honest with you. I did not lock it. But I did not leave it open either. The way I had left everything open for a year while they measured me for a smaller life. There is a kindness that is really just fear of conflict, and I had been practicing it, and it had nearly cost me the ground my grandfather cleared. Real kindness has a spine in it. It says the true thing gently, and then it holds. Now, I promised you the ending your mother would recognize. If you have been sitting with me this long, and I mean to give it to you, because the reckoning was never the point. The reckoning was over in one afternoon. The rest took the seasons. The summer went on. Suzanne and Willa came most Sundays now, and the house had children's noise in it again for the first time since Colleen, and I found I could stand it, could more than stand it. Willa learned to feed radio and to call the beans by their right growth stages, because I taught her, and she believes I am the smartest man in Iowa, and I have continued to do nothing to correct her. I had Harriet redo the estate the right way, out loud this time with everyone in the room. Suzanne became the successor trustee, the one who would carry the land after me, because she was the one who had never once tried to take it. I made a place in it for Dwight too, a real one, but a slower one, tied to the years of honest work he had promised, not to my death. I was done building a future that only paid out when I was in the ground. That kind of future teaches a family to wait for you to die. I wanted one that paid out while I was still standing in it. Dwight kept his terms. I will not tell you it was smooth or that I stopped watching his face because I am his father and not a fool. And trust that has been forged once is rebuilt board by board, or not at all. But he went to Harriet that Monday and wrote it all down. He told Sherry the truth, and it cost him, and they are still finding their way through that, quietly, which is the only way anyone finds their way through anything. Sherry surprised me. I had her figured for the engine of the whole thing, and maybe some of it she was. But in October, she drove out alone one gray afternoon and stood on my porch and could not get her first sentence to hold together. I put her at the table and gave her coffee and let her find it. I told myself you had too much and we had too little, and that made it fair, she said finally, looking at the oilcloth and not at me. It doesn't. I knew it didn't. I let him because I was scared of our life. She started to cry and caught it. I'm not asking you to forgive me, Mr. Ballard. I just didn't want to be a person who never said it out loud. I told her a thing I have come to believe, that the saying it out loud is most of the work, and that a family is not the people who never wrong you, because there are no such people, but the ones who will finally stand in a kitchen and name it. I did not tell her all was mended. It was not. But I poured her a second cup, and she stayed until the light went, and that is not nothing. That is, in fact, how it starts. The winter came on hard, the way it does out here, the wind coming down off the open ground with nothing to slow it. I spent the short days in the house with the stove going, and Colleen's ledger and the radio, and for the first time in 3 years, the quiet did not feel like a thing pressing down on the roof. It felt like rest. There is a difference between a house that is empty and a house that is only peaceful, and I had forgotten it, and I remembered. And then one afternoon in late August, without being asked, he showed up to help me bale hay. He did not knock. He just came around the barn in his old work clothes and started throwing bales onto the wagon beside me the way he did when he was a boy, before either of us knew any of this was coming. We did not talk much. There is not much talking in haying, but we got the field in ahead of the rain, the two of us, and when he left, he did not say anything, and I did not either. And later I found an envelope tucked under the sugar bowl with the first of what he owed and a note in his hand that said only on account, and my name. On account. He was writing it down the way his mother taught us both, so he would never have to argue about it later. So there would be a record of a man trying to become honest, one payment at a time. I sat at the table with that note a long while, with the radio going and her ledger at my elbow, and I will not pretend my eyes were dry. By the fall, he asked to come back to the Sunday table. Not to the farm, he was careful to say. He had learned to be careful about the right things now. I'm not asking for the ground, Dad, he said, standing on the porch with his hat in his hands like a younger man. I'm asking to come back to the table. I told him yes. A door I had closed but never locked, and a son who had spent a season learning the difference and finally turning the handle from his own side, which is the only side it ever opens from. We are not fixed. I want to be plain about that, Because I do not trust stories that tie up too neat, and neither should you. Some things you rebuild, and some things you just set down, and the whole trick of getting old is learning which is which. I set down the year of being managed. I set down the grocery store cake and the leather folder and the sound of my own son telling a stranger I was too far gone to know I was being thrown away. I do not carry those anymore, but I rebuilt the table, board by board, Sunday by Sunday. And Colleen's radio still plays on the windowsill over the sink, and I have still never moved it, and I do not intend to. If you have sat with me all the way to here, let me say the last of it to you directly, the way I would if you were across this table with a cup of my coffee going cold in your hands. If you have ever been treated as though you were already gone by the very people you spent your whole life caring, if you have ever been called forgetful by someone who simply did not want to be caught, if you have ever sat quiet at your own table while people decided your life in front of you because it seemed kinder than the fight, and you have wondered whether staying quiet made you wise or only made you smaller, then this story was for you, and I hope you will do one thing with it. Share it with somebody who needs to hear that a quiet man is not an empty one, and that being underestimated is not the same as being wrong. And if you have a person in your life the whole world has decided to overlook, the one nobody thinks to ask who they really are, tell me about them in the comments. I read them. I read everyone. Thank you for spending this time with me. It means more than an old farmer knows how to say. And remember, whatever your age, whatever they have decided about you, it is never too late to speak the true thing gently, to close a door without locking it, and to choose being answerable over being right. Your quiet is not weakness. It is just a wire with nothing false on it, waiting for the moment the truth needs a clean line to travel down. Drive safe, watch for deer on the section roads, and come see me on a Sunday.